Welcome to our Cybersafe Digest Weekly Podcast, Episode 3. Each week, we will unfold the most recent cyber attacks and will provide you with valuable insights on how to shield your business from these threats, along with practical steps and tips to enhance your cybersecurity.
Hello and welcome to our Cybersafe Digest Weekly Podcast, Episode 3. Today we have a special guest, Ash Lawson. Ash, will you introduce yourself?
Hi Toby, yeah, glad to. Hi everyone, Ash here, Senior Account Manager at Neuways.
Thanks, Ash. So in this podcast, we're going to try and leverage Ash's unique insight into customer requests, customer inquiries, and try and just get that particular perspective on some of the things we're going to talk around. Ash, what is it that customers often ask you when you speak to them around cybersecurity?
All sorts are starting to come through. In fairness, people are really starting to become more aware of some of the threats that are out there. But the biggest question on everybody's minds is what can we actually do to protect ourselves and make sure that we don't fall victim to anything. And the reality is there isn't just a one-size-fits-all fix for this. There's so many different layers of security that need to be taken into account. I guess my first starting point more than anything with customers really is falling back to that three-stage approach of people, process and technology. The first one being people. It's such an important thing now to make end users aware that they are a part of this protection chain. They need to be vigilant. They need to question things, make sure that they are really paying attention to anything that comes through that might be suspicious in any way, shape or form.
Yeah, I think that's really valid. We often refer to the end user as the human firewall. They are the last line, and they are the people that are being targeted by the attackers. And kind of following on from last week's podcast where we spoke around seasonal phishing attacks, one of the things that we do see and an area where the human firewall is so important is the delivery of QR codes through email. They are typically not scanned by the vast majority of email filtering platforms, so they come through unscanned and unfiltered. QR code, for those that need an explanation, is essentially a graphical way of following a link to a website. So email filters will scan a link to a website and check to see whether it is good, bad or indifferent, but they're unable to do the same for QR code.
It's unsuspecting, isn't it? Like you would not expect... people are kind of aware that a link might be malicious now, but a QR code, you'd think, oh, what's that? I mean... Yeah,
exactly. And people are curious, and so that's why they click on links and why they open files when they're not expecting them. And it's establishing that almost state of continual suspicion and distrust of the things that come through. So yeah, it's a tricky one to deal with, but phishing emails at this time of the year are particularly targeted towards end users trying to sell bargains. QR codes is just another way that they're going to be targeting people to try and trick them into visiting a particular site. I think it's also really interesting when you say around what can customers do to protect themselves, and there's a broader play here. So they obviously have to protect themselves, but they also form part of a supply chain, and it's really important that as they are looking after their customers and their suppliers as well, and some of their customers and suppliers may mandate that they have to do certain things. And we saw over this weekend, a port authority in Australia has been hit by ransomware, basically shutting down operations. That's going to stop things coming and going out of Australia. That's going to be a major impact for both business and consumer over there. And it's going to have an inadvertent knock-on effect to the broader supply chain, because people are expecting to have goods and services that they're either bringing in to sell or sending out for overseas are just not going to move.
That's a really fair point though as well, that that's happened over the weekend, and quite often a lot of people think, I'm only going to get hit Monday to Friday. But the reality is nowadays, this is happening 24/7, and end users are starting to be more flexible, more freedom is being offered to people to be able to take those work devices home, or even work from personal devices from home as well. And the fact is, companies are finding it more difficult now to extend their processes and their technology and their protection solutions across all platforms. The fact is, it's so easy to just pop onto your mobile phone, start browsing, especially this time of the year, maybe doing a cheeky bit of shopping when you've got a bit of downtime. And the reality is, if something happens over a weekend as well, it can have such an impact because there's maybe 1-2 full days of where something's given the chance to embed, start to do some, nasty work in the background, and you might not even know about it straight away.
Yeah, exactly. The attackers will absolutely want to try and hit you when you are most vulnerable, which is during the evenings and over a weekend. It's no coincidence that some of the largest attacks on companies' infrastructure happen over holiday weekends. So, over the Christmas break, we see it in the US, 4th of July, Thanksgiving. It's because there is people are on holiday, there are fewer people on the support and security teams monitoring, watching. It's a real problem. Yeah, most attacks don't happen Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. They are, weekend and overnight things.
Wouldn't it be convenient if we could manage it that way, though?
Yeah, yes, it would. Yeah, absolutely.
So really, we're getting into a pretty dangerous time then right now. We've got Thanksgiving coming up. We've got Black Friday, Cyber Monday, moving into the Christmas period.
Exactly, yeah. There's so many different holidays, events, revenue opportunities for organisations that are going to be attempted to be disrupted by the attackers, by the bad guys, by the threat actors. If you can take a site down and hold it to ransom, that retailer, that company is going to pay over the odds to get back up and running so they can capitalise on this time of year.
So people are starting to ask, what do we look for? What are the telltale signs that something might not be a genuine email or could be an attempt to phish the company, phish the end user?
There's several things, and this is by no means an exhaustive list, but some things that people should be looking out for would be the context of the message. Is there a call to action on there? Is there a sense of urgency being instilled to encourage you to take an action, to click on a link or do something like that?
Need you to do this for me urgently.
Exactly, yeah. Look at who the message has come from. If it's somebody you know, check the email address to make sure it matches. If it's not somebody you know, again, check, see if the email address seems to match the remainder of the body. If it's purporting to come from a retailer, does the from address kind of support the identity of that retailer?
Also, maybe question why the retailer is emailing your work address.
Yeah, well, we spoke on the last podcast around why it's a good idea to separate those personal and private emails across two separate accounts. Keep the work stuff in your work account and set up one of those many free services for personal stuff, and that way you can send all of your shopping and personal things to that, and your company one just stays purely for business related things.
Definitely. Anything else that you'd kind of maybe want to look for?
Some of this is scam detection 101. This isn't necessarily a technology thing. This is, if something looks too good to be true, it probably is. Particularly at this time of year, if you see expensive consumer goods advertised at ridiculous discounts, it's probably a scam. So just use some common sense as well. Just because it's come on an email and it's presented on the screen doesn't mean that it's true and legit. I think the other thing to remind people around as well is that the device you're accessing these messages on is also important. Mobile phones particularly have a much smaller screen. Some of this information is a little harder to see than it might be on your PC or your laptop, which has the bigger screen. Often the interface is truncated and cut down to optimize that screen real estate with a focus on the message, and it sometimes hides the message details away. So again, just be extra vigilant on your phone. A lot of people do get caught on the phone, particularly with phishing attacks, because again, it's that sense of urgency that's instilled. Oh, I'm on the move, or I've just looked at this, oh, I can deal with that quickly. Boom, you put some credentials in, and then you've been phished. So just be extra careful on any device, but especially with those mobile devices.
No, that's a great shout. And from my perspective, and certainly the experience I've had in the last year or so, the biggest thing I would say to people is, if you do suspect you may have fallen victim to one of these types of emails, do not ignore it. Make a point of raising it to your line manager, your IT, your support company, whoever it may be. Make sure that you talk about it, because there is nothing worse than saying nothing. These things could take a foothold. You might not realise that something has been breached. It could be days, weeks, months. But the reality is, if you make someone aware that may have happened, there is a greater chance of minimising the impact, minimising the risk, and stopping things before they get out of hand.
Absolutely, yeah, that's absolutely vital. Yeah, there is no shame in admitting that you've fallen for a phishing email and you've clicked on something. It could be one of the best things you actually do after that to protect the company. And for the business owners out there, take a look at your policies and procedures, have some kind of incident reporting policy and process in place so that people know how to report when they've done something like this. This is not about naming and shaming, this is about trying to close the door before the horse bolts.
So, taking all of this advice and all this thought process on board, what would you say is the one thing that I can take back to my customers off the back of this to say, here is what you need to do, here is what we want to see?
Yeah, I think the takeaway from this week really is to build out that incident reporting capability so that there is a safe and shame-free way of reporting when someone has done something that may lead to a broader cyber incident. So, I clicked on a phishing link and I entered some credentials, or I've opened this file that came on by email. The sooner you notify somebody about those, line manager, head of the business, your IT team, your external IT support company, the sooner you can do that, the sooner that the necessary checks can be put in place and anything malicious or nefarious that's occurred can be dealt with.
So no blame, no shame.
Exactly, yeah. This is about stopping this escalating into something bigger and potentially much worse. As we've seen happen time and again, and some of these reports that we read in the press have all started in a similar way. Someone has received something, someone has clicked on something, and they tend to spiral from that way. One thing that we do know for sure now is that most attackers don't break in, they log in. So they've normally stolen credentials, and they do that through phishing. So letting people know that you may have compromised your credentials ASAP is absolutely vital.
Great advice.
So thank you everybody for listening. Thank you to Ash for joining me today.
Most welcome. Thank you for having me.
I hope you found it very useful. Please remember to pick us up for next week. And thank you and goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. We've reached the end of episode 3 of our Cybersafe Digest Weekly Podcast. Thank you very much for listening, and to make sure you don't miss out on our future episodes, hit that subscribe button on Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcast. For more cybersecurity wisdom and resources, head over to our website at cybersafe.co.uk. See you next Thursday.